Welcome to the show, guys. I'm super excited to continue the Fantasy Football Impact Outlook videos. Today, we're focusing on the Chicago Bears. We're talking Chicago Bears Fantasy Outlook and Team Projection Outlook with inside information from beat writers for specific teams. I'm having trouble talking today. I'm just so excited because we're talking Bears, and there's a couple Bears players I'm super pumped about. And we've got Jon Zaghloul on the show. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that right. It's better you give yourself an introduction because I'm trying to bring in, I'm not even trying, I'm actually doing it. I'm bringing in the best of the best that have the inside information on the team and the scoop and inside scoop. So, Jon, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where do you cover the Bears? What do you do? Is it just the Bears you cover? Let us know about yourself. And we're going to dive in, guys, Fantasy Impact, Outlook, and Chicago Bears. From Montgomery to Mooney to Fields, we got it covered. What's going on, Jon? And let us know a little bit about you, please.
Joseph, thanks for having me. I'm the sports director here in Chicago at WCKG, which is a radio station. I also host on VPod TV, channel 59.3 on the antenna. And I run Sports Talk Chicago on YouTube and on every podcasting platform. Cover the Bears mainly, but I cover every other team here in Chicago. I've been doing this for about 9 years now. It started as articles, turned into podcasts, and now YouTube, TV, and radio. So I'm doing it all, and really appreciative of the opportunity. There's a lot of stuff to talk about with this Bears team. Obviously, heading over from last year into this year, new coach, new GM, bigger expectations for Justin Fields. There's going to be a lot we're going to discuss today, and I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive in. And guys, to find him, make sure you guys go follow him. Is it on Twitter at Jon, J-O-N-Z. For the people listening in the car, head on over to Twitter, J-O-N-Z as in zebra, sports, Jon Z Sports on Twitter. Is that correct?
That is correct. And Sports Talk Chicago on YouTube as well. You can subscribe to the channel anytime. Sports
Talk Chicago on YouTube. And the advantage, guys, to this is to turn on your bells notifications to these guys that are, these guys are the feet on the street. They've got the inside information. So if you are interested in maybe injuries or updates on your players, make sure you guys are following. I've done the due diligence of getting them here on the show. Take advantage of what their offering is in their content. So make sure you guys do that. Now, I want to just dive in here. I just want to get right to it. Let's talk about the coaching because I don't want to say the word hate because hate is a hard. I dislike Nagy. I dislike what he did with the Bears. Maybe you agree. Maybe you disagree. Maybe you like Nagy. I don't know. We didn't talk before this, so I could be completely wrong. We don't know. But what annoyed me initially with Nagy, he's no longer the coach now. What annoyed me was when Montgomery came into his rookie year, I was excited for Montgomery in fantasy. I got him in like the third round or something like that. It was like my RB2 or 3 because I always go robust RB. By the way, do you play fantasy at all, Jon, or is there a conflict of interest in playing? Do you play for fun?
I didn't play this past year. Usually I play in 1 or 2 leagues every year, but my friends this year didn't want to do a league, so I was kind of left in the dust.
Okay, fair enough. I'll have to get you in a league. You don't want to compete with me unless you want to get eaten up alive by the Lions.
I was going to say, yeah, I'm not that good.
That's all I do. But what annoyed me was Montgomery was coming out for like a bunch of runs. He'd come on for the first run. He'd run out for like 10, 15 yards or he'd get a nice pass. And then he'd trot off to the sideline. They bring in Tariq Cohen. I'm like, why? I'm like, just keep Montgomery on the field. He's doing better than both of them. And Tariq Cohen would basically get stuffed at the goal line. I'm like, why are you giving Tariq Cohen goal line work? Like, there was so much stuff that year. It was Montgomery's year where I really wanted to smash my head off the wall, like from a fantasy perspective. And I'm sure as Bears fans, you probably got annoyed with him. So can we just talk initially about the coaching, who the new coach is, a little background information on him now? Is it good that Nagy's gone? And how much this is going to boost the offense? And will it boost the offense offensively, defensively? What is it changing? And how is it going to benefit them, please, with the coaching?
Well, let me just say this to start. I know you don't want to use the word hate. I do. I hate Matt Nagy. He is just a horrendous coach. He did so much damage to this Bears team in every single aspect. And I understand they won in 2018, but the problem was none of that success carried over to 2019, 2020, and then 2021. I'm of the opinion that he sabotaged somewhat Mitch Trubisky's career. And there was a report that came out after he was fired that suggested just as much after 2020, where at the end of the season, basically, Mitch Trubisky was supposed to have an exit meeting with him, and Nagy blew him off and just didn't do it. And then obviously Trubisky was gone just a few weeks later, left a free agency, and they let him go. And, he went to the Bills for a 1-year deal. So the fact is, Nagy came in as a quarterback's guru. He was brought in to help out Mitch Trubisky's career. His rookie year wasn't horrible, but it wasn't good. He was under John Fox, somebody who obviously has no idea how to develop a quarterback. Nagy was brought in to do it. He didn't do it. Plain and simple. He had 1 good year, and then after that, I think he kind of got in Mitch Trubisky's way a little bit, especially in 2020 when the Bears were 2-0 and he benched Trubisky after one interception. It always seemed like he was just looking for a way to bench him, looking to find the opportunity to do it, to put in Nick Foles. And then obviously that didn't work. And Nick Foles now isn't even on the Bears anymore either. Now he's out in Indianapolis. Matt Nagy's offensive philosophy was also messed up. So last season, and I just talked about this on my program the other day, the Bears called play action 25% of the time, yet Justin Fields' passer rating with play action was 102.2. Justin Fields threw all of his interceptions on non-play action plays, which were called 75% of the time. It just goes to show you that Matt Nagy is not willing to help out his quarterbacks. He's not a quarterback's coach. He's instead a, you have to conform to me type coach. That sort of philosophy doesn't really work in the NFL anymore. I mean, I bring this up all the time. Look at Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. I mean, everybody said he was going to be a wide receiver, a running back, a tight end, yet they found a way to cater an offense to him that allowed him to run the football, rush for 1,000 yards per year, pass for 3,000. And I mean, they're a winning football team, and Lamar Jackson is more than a winning quarterback, and they do well when he's playing. That's the type of philosophy that the Bears needed from day one. They never got that with Nagy. I'm pretty surprised that he actually found another job, to be completely honest with you, because what he did here in Chicago, a lot of people are not going to forget. And there's new reports coming out each and every day, not just about how much Justin Fields loathed him, but about how he hurt Mitch Trubisky's career. So it's pretty frustrating to say the least. Matt Eberflus is the hire that nobody really expected. Nobody really knew his name when he was hired. He's obviously a defensive coordinator, had a couple of good elite defenses in Indianapolis, but this past year, the Colts were ranked 20th in defense in the NFL. So a lot of people were worried about that. He did bring in Luke Getsy, though, as the offensive coordinator. He was formerly the Packers passing game coordinator. He didn't call plays out in Green Bay, but he worked with Aaron Rodgers, and he used to be a college coach in Mississippi, where he was the offensive coordinator and he called plays there. So far, reports are very good about how he's working with Justin Fields. Apparently, he's improved his drop back. He's improved his release and how long he's going to take to get rid of the football. And he is supposed to be, at least according to reports, a very good player's coach in the sense that he can work to Justin Fields' strengths. And obviously that play action statistic I just told you is something that they're going to have to emphasize. In regards to the run game, Matt Nagy was not really keen on using his running backs, which I found a little bit odd. Under John Fox, the Bears ran the football a lot. And granted, they were behind in a lot of their games, but still, Jordan Howard was second in the NFL his rookie year in rushing yards, only behind Ezekiel Elliott. Then all of a sudden, Jordan Howard doesn't work in Matt Nagy's offense, and now he's off the Bears entirely. And he's been out of the NFL in and out for a couple of years. Doesn't make sense to me when he rushed for 1,300 yards under John Fox. Then he rushed for 900 on Matt Nagy's first year. Then he was gone. Same with David Montgomery. I think David Montgomery is a very talented running back. He's a dual threat running back, no question. He could catch, he could run, he could do it all for the Bears, and yet I don't think he was utilized properly. With the Bears, no, not at all. Tariq Cohen, whom I used to like, is not on the team anymore either. Obviously, he's went through stuff off the field, but still, his on-the-field performance was not better ever than David Montgomery, and he was used quite a bit. And then Khalil Herbert this past year, I thought made some good impressions, and he's going to be a part of this offense moving forward. But still, David Montgomery should be the number one, and he did not get many opportunities under Matt Nagy. So I think things are going to change this year as well. So I hope I answered your question. It's kind of long-winded, but basically, I hate Matt Nagy. I think he's hurt this offense more than he's helped it. David Montgomery needs more opportunities, and Justin Fields needs a coach or a play caller who caters to him, and hopefully they got that. Luke Getsy and Matt Eberflus as the head coach.
I don't want to spend too much more time on Nagy, but what do you think it was with him? Was this that, I always go on and make a joke about Mitch Trubisky slept with Nagy's wife or what? I always kind of joke, the fantasy community gets pissed off, and that's obviously not the case. Well, we don't know, but what I want to say is, what do you think it's an ego thing to have these type of issues, not meeting with Trubisky and not giving these guys opportunities? Is it like my way or the highway? Like what is it? Like, you're going against the fans. Like you got people in Soldier Field getting angry at you, like wanting to throw beer at your head. Like obviously there's something wrong. You're the problem. There's a common denominator. Is it an ego thing, or is it just like a lack of idiocracy? Like, I'm just an idiot, I don't know how to coach. Or is it a combination? I don't know. Why was it so bad?
I think it's a combination of both. I mean, think about this. The Bears have gone through 5 quarterbacks in the past 4 years. Nick Foles, Andy Dalton, Justin Fields, Chase Daniel, Mitch Trubisky. None of them worked. So it's not the quarterback problem. He tried to pin everything on Mitch Trubisky. It's not a quarterback issue. That's a Matt Nagy issue. I think it definitely stems from ego first and foremost. The fact that you cannot conform to your quarterback and you force all of them to conform to you when your offense just simply does not work. And players have even said in interviews, hey, this stuff looks great in practice, but it doesn't work in the game. He's a great practice coach. Well, then that's all you need to know. And these are players who are even defensive players who've come out and said stuff like that. So I think it's just a combination mainly of ego, but also idiocy. Matt Nagy does not know how to coach in a game situation. He's a great practice coach. He knows plays like the back of his hand. But when it comes to a game situation, when it comes to the variables that you do not see in practice, he can't coach against them. And that's why, at least for now, he's back in Kansas City. I've heard reports that he might become the heir apparent to Andy Reid. And if so, I just hope that Patrick Mahomes doesn't have to deal with him because he might ruin his career too.
Probably. I like that you're straight up, and that's how I am with my fans. I don't like to BS or sugarcoat stuff. So that's really nice to get that refreshing perspective. Okay, so let's break down the offense here, please, from a fantasy perspective. And for you, it doesn't have to necessarily be fantasy, but we're talking volume and talent. So we're looking at Justin Fields. Obviously, with the coaching, we've kind of discussed it. Hopefully that's going to be improved. Justin Fields, is he what we're looking for? Is he going to be that elite quarterback? Is he going to be like a Mahomes, a Josh Allen? Is he going to be the guy that could potentially lead these guys to the promised land? Or is he kind of like a placeholder right now? And like, again, we don't know until this year, but have you been seeing anything in training that's shining to you? Does his physical ability look good? And I've had some inside information from somebody, I can't say who, that works with them to some degree. And I heard that him and Mooney, they're looking good together. Like, they're connecting, they talk to each other, their connection is there. How does Fields look? Does he look ultra elite, or is he going to be a placeholder kind of guy?
I think he has the potential to be ultra elite, but right now, obviously, he hasn't shown it. And it's not necessarily his fault. Again, bad coach, and now he's going to come in with a brand new coach, brand new play calling. So I would treat this season, if I were a fantasy football player, as his rookie year. There are going to be ups and there are going to be downs. At the end of the day, he's learning a brand new offense on the fly. The good part is he's taking first team reps. Last year, he didn't, which a lot of people forget about. He didn't take first team reps in the offseason. This year, he is. So he's coming in as the number one quarterback. He's coming in as the franchise quarterback, which is great. But he's learning a new offense. So it's going to take some time to determine how well he could catch on and how well he's going to do. Based on people that I've talked to, a lot of people expect some sort of jump. I tend to agree with that. I don't think we're going to see Justin Fields throw 11 interceptions again and only, 8 or 9 touchdowns and, go 2-9 as a quarterback. I don't see that happening. But that said, there are going to be growing pains, no question. I think this year's the year of development for him, not just for this team, for him. The Bears have a lot of money in dead cap. Obviously, everyone's talking about 2023 when they're supposed to have around $140 million in cap space. That's when they're going to spend and get better for 2023. But I think this year, not only for the team, but especially for Fields, it's going to be a developmental type year. I don't think it's a bad idea to stash Justin Fields on your bench at all, but I don't think he should be your QB1 if you're going to be a fantasy football player come this year, simply because we don't know. He could be great. He could adjust to this offense insanely, very well, and he could lead the Bears to a fringe playoff berth, and that'd be amazing. I don't know if that's going to happen, though, genuinely. And that's just because I don't know how he's connecting with Luke Getsy. I don't know how he's going to do in a game atmosphere with these new plays and this new play calling. And last year, he had a fumbling problem, and he had an interception problem. And again, of course, we're talking about different play calling regardless, but the fumbles were partially on him as well. So he needs to clean himself up. He needs to grow as a player. This is only going to be his second year. And it's very rare that we see quarterbacks just catch on right away, catch on fire. We've seen it with Herbert, we've seen it with Mahomes, but really when you think about other quarterbacks as of late, it doesn't always happen that way. And that's okay. So in Fields' case, I would think that this year is going to be a year of growth. He's definitely going to do better than last year, no question. I just don't know how much better. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you, hey, it's going to be a 30 touchdown, 10 interception type season, simply because I don't think he has enough weapons yet. The Bears aren't ready to spend too much money on him or around him yet. There are a lot of things that still need to be done.
Yeah, that's what concerns me. Like 7 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, didn't really get going. Started 12 games last year. I'm looking at his stats. Nothing to get excited about. From a fantasy perspective, there's just too many other good quarterbacks to start over him that have more of a secure stat line that you feel more comfortable going into the season with. So that's one thing that turns me off. And the other one is wide receivers. Are we comfortable as a Bears fan to have Mooney? Again, I think Mooney's good. I don't know if he's great. He's no Jamar Chase by any means or Justin Jefferson. I don't see that. But I see him being a solid, steady receiver. He's going to be able to handle double coverage. the top corners. I know you guys drafted, who did you guys, that guy, Velus Jones Jr.
Mhm.
I mean, Byron Pringle, like, I'm not excited about Pringle. Like, I'm looking at this offense in regards to wide receivers, and I'm not seeing anything that scares me as a defense. Like, could I be wrong about Mooney? I mean, I like Mooney for fantasy. I think he's good value. I think he's going to get volume. I like him, but is he going to be sensational this year? Like, what do you think? Do you guys look a little lackluster here at wide receiver? Can you agree?
I think it's one of the worst wide receiving cores in the NFL right now, and I don't even mean that as a slight. It's just the truth. You know, Darnell Mooney is a very good wide receiver, but I don't see him as a bona fide number one, top 10, top 15 in the NFL yet. He may never get there, to be honest with you. He's a fifth round pick, and he's been serviceable. Last year, he got 1,000 yards with the extra game, or if not, he would have gotten around 900, 950, which is fine. Did better than Allen Robinson, but Allen Robinson was hurt part of the season as well, and it wasn't Justin Fields' preferred target. Fields and Mooney get along really well, so I think for fantasy purposes, if you want to draft one wide receiver from the Bears, it better be Mooney. As far as everybody else goes, Byron Pringle, I'm not too high on. A lot of other people are, but here's my argument with Pringle. He did well last year as the Chiefs' number 2 or number 3. That was with the Chiefs and their offense with Patrick Mahomes, and he still only put up around 600 yards. I don't see him actually exceeding those numbers here in Chicago with an offense that we know nothing about. After Pringle, you know, there are a lot of question marks. Velus Jones Jr., yes, the Bears drafted him. A lot of people have said he's going to be more so of a gadget player, kind of like a dumbed-down Ebo Samuel, a watered-down Debo Samuel. He has the talent for sure, but you know, a lot of people have said this is not going to be a 1,000-yard wide receiver. The Bears are probably going to use him a lot in special teams, actually, potentially as a return man, along with the ability to run a little bit on offense and catch a few passes along the way. After him, they have St. Brown from the Packers, who has a career-high 98 receiving yards in one season. So take that for what you will. So the fact is, this is not a good wide receiving room. This is the one problem that I have with this team moving into this season. I don't think their wide receiving room is nearly enough for Justin Fields to succeed. He's going to have to prefer Darnell Mooney, but when Darnell Mooney's going to be in double coverage, who else is he going to throw to? And that's where it's going to come down to guys like Pringle, St. Brown, Velus Jones Jr. if they decide to use him. So it's a really shaky situation to me. It would be nice if they could have a bona fide number 1, because Darnell Mooney to me is a natural number 2, no question. But then again, from a fantasy perspective, if the Bears do nothing else in free agency number 2, and we enter the season as if this roster was today, Darnell Mooney's the guy to draft, but still, I don't know if he's ever going to be this bona fide top 10, top 15 receiver in the NFL. We're going to have to wait and see.
The way my brain works, I might be jumping ahead because we're going to talk about running backs and tight ends in a second here. Again, from a fantasy perspective, I aim high on the depth chart. So when I'm looking at this depth chart, my brain is thinking Darnell Mooney volume, which is good. That's a good thing. But then I think to myself, like, will he be able to handle double corners? That might be an issue. The second thing my brain starts to think is running back. Is David Montgomery, opportunity for David Montgomery, more rushing, but more stacked boxes. And then I also look at the tight end, Cole Kmet. Like, could he be used as a wide receiver? Is he a high volume wide receiver? Could he be the next Travis Kelce? Or am I that's a big bold statement, but am I reaching? Is it? So my question is this, let's dumb this down. More stacked boxes for Dave Montgomery, yes or no? And more targets for Cole Kmet, yes or no?
So let's start with Cole Kmet, because I have a pretty good opinion on him. So Cole Kmet last year actually put up some respectable receiving yard numbers, despite the fact that the Bears weren't good. But here's the problem. 0 touchdowns, 0 all season. That has to change. I was not a fan of Cole Kmet coming in, only because he dropped too many passes his rookie year. He has some problems holding on to the football, fumbles a little bit too often for my liking. But I think there's an opportunity for growth. If he could catch 5 touchdown passes and put up the same numbers he did last year, I think that's great fantasy output. We're talking about 700-ish yards, 5 touchdowns. That's not bad. That's pretty, and that's a value tight end on top of it, because nobody really knows about who Cole Kmet is, and nobody knows what he's capable of doing. He quietly put up 600-plus yards last year. I think that's pretty impressive considering how bad the Bears were and how the focus was more so on Matt Nagy and Justin Fields rather than, hey, Darnell Mooney put up 1,000 and Cole Kmet was also a preferred target for Justin Fields. I think Cole Kmet...
93 targets, not bad for a tight end.
Right. I mean, he had good targets, just had no touchdowns, and still a bit of an issue when it came to ball security, which I'd like to see him clean up.
Right.
So hopefully he can. But that's something to consider. As far as David Montgomery goes, when it comes to the stacked box, that all depends on play calling. Here's what I do know. If the Bears call more play actions, which they might or they should, because that's one of Justin Fields' strengths when he's on the move, when he's not just strictly in the pocket, but can move, could roll out a little bit, throw the football, he's a higher passer rating, which I just told you, 102.2, then I think David Montgomery has a great opportunity to gain some yards, no question. The problem with Montgomery is going to be how much are they going to use Herbert? Herbert did great last year. David Montgomery also missed a game or two. So it's going to be a question of how much do they prefer Herbert to Montgomery. Then you got to remember this as well. David Montgomery is going to be soon in a contract year. The Bears have already talked about potentially extending him or not. So that's also going to be added into the fray. Does he have more motivation to do better because he might be entering free agency? I think David Montgomery would be a responsible pickup. In fantasy-wise, because he's still going to be the RB1, and he's still going to have the majority of the carries, at least, I would say, 220 or 230, if not more. So I think he's a respectable pickup, no question. And if the Bears call more play actions, I think it's going to be to his benefit and to Justin Fields' benefit and to this whole offense's benefit. But it's just a matter of the play calling, and we don't know what Luke Getsy prefers or what he's going to do yet. We just have to wait and see how it goes in these first couple of games.
So stat line for Montgomery, you're saying around he had 225 last year. I think that definitely goes up with Nagy getting away. Maybe I'm
right.
40 at least. Only 7 touchdowns, 3.8 yards per carry. Again, he missed those games too. So you got to imagine. So let's say he missed those 3-4 games, whatever. That jumps him up to at least 250, right? And then he gets more ball. Maybe we're looking at 280 attempt type year for Montgomery. Could that be possible?
I fully believe that. And I think that's going to be very important, especially for Justin Fields. Justin Fields is going to need some sort of competent run game to help him develop. Because if he's throwing the ball all the time, it's not going to work for him. Everyone's going to know it's coming, and he's not going to put up the numbers that the Bears want to see from him. At the same time, it could hurt his confidence. So the Bears do need a run game. David Montgomery is a volume-type running back. He's not maybe a Jordan Howard, per se, where Howard was getting 280, 300 carries per season. But I expect Montgomery to have at least 250 this year. So I think, you'd have a safe bet if you brought in David Montgomery on your fantasy team. He would get you at least 250 carries, maybe right around 1,000 yards, maybe a little bit over, maybe 1,100. And he'd also catch the football. I think he's a safe bet fantasy-wise for sure.
Yeah, I like him this year. And he's coming off in and around, just to give you some FYI, coming off in and around the 3rd round. So he's good value. I think a lot of people are sleeping on him. Again, I'm just kind of worried about that stack boxes. They've got no wide receiver. So is there any opportunity for them to acquire anyone else? How's the salary cap in regards to wide receivers? Anyone that can slide in there? When would that time happen if they're going to get another wide receiver before the season starts?
Well, this year it's going to be tough because they have a lot of dead cap space. They have $25 million in dead cap just from the Khalil Mack trade alone. All that's going to go away next year, which is why I mentioned earlier, come 2023, the Bears are going to have around $120 to $140 million in free cap space, which they're probably going to use to extend a couple of players. Montgomery could be a candidate, but also go out and actually acquire people. Deebo Samuel does not want to stay in San Francisco, or maybe even this year. Maybe he doesn't want to stay this year. There's an opportunity for a trade, no question, but I think the majority of the Bears' moves are going to come after this season when they know what they have with Justin Fields, when they've had a year to test out this offense and this defense with Matt Eberflus, and when they have more money to spend. I don't put it past the Bears to acquire somebody else at the wide receiving position before game 1. I just find it unlikely, considering that Ryan Poles has shown through his signings and through his acquisitions so far that he doesn't want to give out long-term contracts, and he doesn't want to spend too much money. He wants this team to be his, and right now he's tasked with getting rid of all the dead money that Ryan Pace had on the cap. So getting rid of Khalil Mack, he let Akeem Hicks go. No dead money there, but still that's freeing up some more cap space for him as well. Ryan Poles is most concerned about having as much free cap space as possible for 2023 and getting rid of veterans that don't help him out now. And when he signs people, they're mostly 1, 2, or 3 year deals. They're not long-term things. So I would be shocked if the Bears acquired somebody else for the wide receiving position before game 1. It's certainly possible, and I'd be very happy about it. But I think we have to look towards 2023 when it comes to getting a new wide receiver for the Bears. That's why at this point, if you're drafting now, if you're going to be drafting soon, make sure you target Darnell Mooney because he's going to be the consensus number 1 on this team without question.
Oh, I love that. That's why I love him. I think he's great value. Can you just give me an NFC North kind of breakdown? Where do you think you guys fall this year? I can give you, again, I'm no expert here with how they're going to do in their division in regards to reality so much, but I can just get an overview of my brain kind of scans the team and tells me by quick glance that they're going to finish 3rd in division. Green Bay obviously losing Adams. I don't know how much that's going to hurt them. Vikings look good. I think they're solid all around with Jefferson, Cousins. I think they're in the groove. Lions are the Lions. So do you think maybe a 3rd finish for this year for them, or could they slip past maybe Minnesota and Green Bay, and how's the outlook for a Super Bowl this year? I mean, who knows? Anything can happen, right?
Anything can happen, and the Bengals proved it last year. So I'm not going to say that it's impossible, but I think this team is still in the midst of a rebuild, unfortunately, due to the hands of really Ryan Pace spending too much money and giving out too many bad contracts. I think third place is a responsible finish. That said, the Bears' schedule right now is much easier than last year. I could see the Bears winning 9 games and going 9-8 or 8-9 and hovering maybe for a fringe wild card spot, no question. But the problem is there are a lot of unknowns. The wide receiving core is not good enough. Justin Fields needs to develop. You have a brand new offense. The Packers are not going to get any worse, per se, and if they do, it'll be by a game or two because you still have Aaron Rodgers. And Minnesota, I think, is a solid team. Their only problem is last year they also now got rid of their GM and their head coach, Minnesota. They have a new GM and a new head coach, but the same personnel. And I thought last year they were a very talented team. They just didn't perform, plain and simple. Right. So I think they have an opportunity to perform this year and probably stick in firm at that number 2 spot and get a wild card berth. I think that's very possible. The Bears will probably contend for that second spot. But I think at the end of the day, third's probably going to be a good finish. Although don't sleep too much on Detroit. I'm sleeping on them right now because it's Detroit and they suck. But in the next couple of years, I think they're going to be a very solid team. You know, this team proved last year that they can rally around Dan Campbell. He's a good leader of men. Jared Goff, believe it or not, actually turned it on. I give him credit. I thought he was going to suck it up last year, but he actually did okay. Later on in the season, turned it on, and now they have Malik Willis so I don't know how that's going to work out for them, how they're going to deal with the quarterback situation over there. But that's something. So I think right now the Bears are probably going to be firm in that number 3 spot. They could do better based on how Justin Fields does. Justin Fields could take it over, and he could do great, and the Bears could win 12 or 11 games. But I just don't know yet, to be honest with you. So we're going to have to see again how it plays out. But I think third is the responsible pick and prediction right now.
Yeah, I mean, Lions, don't underestimate him. I think Hawkinson's very talented. Amon-Ra St. Brown stepped up. They got Jamison Williams now. They've got DeAndre Swift. Like, they've got some pretty solid talent there. They just got to bring it all together, the Lions. I wouldn't sleep, on those guys.
Yeah, no question. I mean, they have some good pieces. They're just not fully there yet. And last year was a growing year for them, and they lost a lot of close games, and their record was not good. But they rallied, to their credit, again later in the year, and I thought Jared Goff was certainly respectable. I thought he was going to do much worse without Sean McVay, but he proved me wrong. He didn't do horribly. So maybe if he could uptick that production a little bit, and if the Lions could continue to improve under Dan Campbell and really learn how to play as a team together, there's an opportunity there to potentially go 6-11, which really for them is a big improvement going into next year when it's going to be your third year under Dan Campbell with a bunch of the same players and the new group gelling together. It's certainly possible.
I'm going to have to get the Packers guy on here. It seems like you're very knowledgeable about the division. A guy I'm excited about. We'll go off on a quick tangent here, and then we'll wrap it up here. Yeah. But Christian Watson, I mean, 169 freed up targets there. Lazard has not really wowed us. Cobb's kind of olding. They got Sammy Watkins. Robert Tonyan, I think I'm excited about. What do you think of this offense? Where is that volume going to go? Christian Watson's the guy that's kind of jumping out at me, and he's an immense value in drafts. You get this guy 9th, 10th round, and you're basically possibly getting a wide receiver 1 under Aaron Rodgers. Any predictions? Do you have any insight on the Packers and how that offense should work this year?
Well, I do know this. I wanted Watson for the Bears. I thought he was a very talented wide receiver, and in some mock drafts, it was predicted that the Bears would get him. They ended up not doing it. They would have probably had to trade up. I think Watson's a very talented wide receiver. And when you look at the Packers wide receiving core after Watson, there are a lot of unknowns. Like you said, Cobb is old, Watkins is old, Tonyan should be okay. And you mentioned somebody else there, too, that I'm forgetting.
Alan Lazard.
Lazard as well. So Lazard, I mean, he's been around, right? So he has familiarity with Rodgers, but Lazard has never been more than a WR3 or WR2 fringe if you're in a deeper league. So at that point, it's like, well, who's going to be the number 1? It's going to have to come down to somebody stepping up. Watson is a top wide receiver, and he was in this draft, and he was in college as well. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up putting up a 1,000-esque yard season or maybe a 900-yard season taking over for Devontae Adams. I think that would be a great value to take him in the 9th or 10th round if that's where he's projected to go.
Yeah, he's amazing. They also drafted, I think it was round 4, Romeo Dobbs. I'm not too excited about. They've got a bunch of other guys there too, but Watson's just jumping out at me. So I just thought I'd bring that up. All right. One more thing here before I let you go. And I appreciate you. A lot of insight. I'm very impressed. I'm sure listeners are like, wow, this guy really knows his stuff here, but very impressive. Any type of inside information that maybe someone doesn't know is like, I heard something like Montgomery gaining some pounds of muscle. He's looking leaner. Is there any type of little golden nuggets, I like to say, that maybe we don't know? Maybe Justin Fields, maybe he's doing sprints up a hill and he looks really fast. Is there anything that maybe any inside information that we might know that could help us making a draft decision, or even for a Bears fan that maybe someone doesn't know that you could share with us? Maybe a couple pieces of information, anything.
Well, I do know, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, but Justin Fields has improved his drop back and his release under Luke Getsy. They've been working on that extensively during OTAs, and it's supposed to be much better. Again, I haven't seen it. We're not going to see it till game day, but that's what's been reported. I like to think that could really help him out when it comes to getting rid of the football. Justin Fields obviously had no offensive line last year, but still took too much time to get rid of the ball, and then obviously had ball security problems with 11 fumbles. That actually led the NFL. That's an issue that needs to be cleaned up. So hopefully improving his drop back and improving his release and the time of release could certainly help him out in that regard. I just expect a decent year from David Montgomery. I think with this new offensive system, one that should prioritize the running back more than Matt Nagy ever did, will help him. That's just by default. Again, Matt Nagy's offenses did not prefer running the football. Jordan Howard had 1,000 yards every year till Matt Nagy took over, and then Jordan Howard was gone. After that, Tariq Cohen had one decent-ish year, but that was 399 yards rushing. That was his best year ever under Matt Nagy. So that's also not something to really get too excited about. David Montgomery catches, and he could run. And he's a dual threat running back. And I think if he is going to be used correctly in this offense, he could easily be a top 10 fantasy running back in terms of points and in terms of volume. I could totally see it, because at the end of the day, he's catching the football. He's going to be a safety blanket for Justin Fields, and he's running. He's going to be running, I think, at least 230 to 250 times, if not more, by the end of the season. So I would really put a lot of stock into David Montgomery. Darnell Mooney, of course, is your WR1. And Justin Fields, I would stash on your bench. Just be careful with him, because we don't know what to expect. But hey, if Justin Fields blows up, if he has a Justin Herbert type year in his second year with this new offense, then the sky's the limit. And you could have two really good quarterbacks on your roster to where you're going to have to actually wonder who to start each week. I'd rather have that problem than the opposite.
Man, it's been crazy. I'm just looking right now. Fields is one of those quarterbacks I question, but there's so many situations like with quarterbacks this year that they're in a touch and field trial situation. You got Marcus Mariota with the Falcons, Darnold with the Panthers. Is he going to be the guy? There's just so many question marks. Deshaun Watson with the Browns. How's that going to look? Davis Mills with the Texans. Like so many weird. Who is there? The guy with the Jet. I got so many things going. Zach Wilson, right? Like
right.
We don't even know what's going to happen with these guys. Like some of these guys, like they're like almost like feelers this year. We got Mitch Trubisky. Is Kenny Pickett going to take over? Like Jalen Hurts with the Eagles. We got Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo battle going on. If that's even a battle, maybe Trey Lance gets to start right off the bat. You got Carson Wentz in Washington. Like there's so many situations at quarterback where you're like, is this going to be a good fit? And this is a year where it's going to be touch and field where, so Fields is kind of in good company where this is a good year to experiment him, because so many other teams I think are in an experimental stage is what I'm trying to get at.
And that's the good part. You bring up a great point, Joseph. At the end of the day, here's the thing. The good thing about Justin Fields, if you're a fantasy football player, is you do not have to worry about him getting benched or having somebody come in and take over for him. And I know that sounds common sense, but at the end of the day, even if Fields does not do amazing, he's going to start every game. In some of these other situations, Mariota, I don't know if he's going to start every game. Mitch Trubisky, I don't know if he's going to start every game. Even Carson Wentz, there could be an opportunity in which either he gets hurt or he does not simply perform with this new team in the Commanders. So there are a lot of questions. Darnold, too. Wilson, all these guys, I don't think, have firm footing as the starting quarterback. Justin Fields does. Justin Fields is 100% unequivocally the starter. Trevor Siemian is simply there to back him up. I mean, let's be honest here. Trevor Siemian is not a better quarterback than Justin Fields, nor will he come in and will the Bears say, you know what, Justin, you're going to be benched for Trevor Siemian. So at least when it comes to Justin Fields, if you're quarterback needy, hey, he's going to start for you every game. Don't know how good he's going to do, but at least you can ensure, he's probably going to play at least 15 to 16 games. He'll start every day, and he'll do what he needs to do. And it's better than being in the situation where, I draft Marcus Mariota, and he's benched week 4, and then you're screwed as him being your starting quarterback. Or same with Wentz or Wilson or Darnold or Trubisky, a number of these other situations where things could be a little bit iffy heading into week 1 and even throughout the season as well, where somebody could get benched week 8 or week 10, and you don't know what you're going to do for the rest of the season.
I'll let you go after this, but one thing that I'm looking at a comparison now with kind of two quarterbacks in the same situation, but one major difference They got almost like the same player. You got Tua in Miami, who's kind of in the same situation, kind of getting his time to start. He dabbled last year, nice full, but he's got weapons. So if this is an interesting gauge, if Field does way better than Tua, then that shows that that he's got all the weapons. Tua's got to succeed. You know what I'm saying?
I like Tua. Actually, and I think he's gotten somewhat of a raw deal. But then at the same time, it's like, you know what? You can only wait so long. I understand why there's so much, I guess, tension about Tua Tagovailoa, because a lot of people expected him to be good, first-round pick. At the same time, he's been hurt. Then you had Brian Flores, who, his rookie year, Tua would come in, then come out. Fitzpatrick would come in, Tua would come in. That's got to mess with the quarterback's head. Let's just be honest here. And that's not going to help you out moving forward. Now, the argument is, he should be mentally tough. Well, look, rookie year, contending for a playoff appearance, not as many weapons, and hurt on top of it. That's a lot of things you're going to throw at a rookie quarterback. But this year's the year for Tua. I'd try to give him as much leeway as possible. But if you can't succeed with the weapons you have, including frickin' Tyreek Hill, then that's it at that point. And if Justin Fields could do somewhat similar to Tua, or could at least show more promise, or could put up, even numbers that maybe aren't similar to Tua, but you could see he's on the right track with less weapons, that's a great sign, because Tua has a lot down there. He has a new coach on top of it, too. If he can't perform with what he's been given at this point, then I think, the book might be closed on Tua. And that's a shame, but it's the reality, because he's got a lot, and they've actually rallied behind him. They've given a vote of confidence in him with all these moves they've made for him. If he can't perform, that's going to be it. And the Dolphins are going to be looking for a new quarterback come next year. And that's just it's the cold, hard truth. And the case for Miami, I'd love to. I want to give him some rope. But at the end of the day, there's only so much rope you can give.
We're going on a tangent here, since you got me. It just might be thinking here. This is way off here. But the guy who should be on the shortest leash in the NFL, years to Wami Warnat Wout, has only had, who I'm talking about, 2 playoff appearances, and he's lost both. The guy I'm talking about, he's got all the weapons and no excuses in the world. This is his last year, and he shouldn't even have this year. But Derek Carr. There's no more excuses for this guy. If I were the Raiders, I would have got rid of this guy 5 years ago. Yet they continue to think that he is the Pat Mahomes of this team. The delusion is crazy. It's like almost like the Bears had Jay Cutler. It's like, come on, guys. He's not that good. I don't know why people can't. Do you think Derek Carr is good? Am I delusional here? Because I say how he sucks. And I saw this when the Eagles paid Carson Wentz. They paid him, I think it was $128 million. I went on Instagram. I'm big on Instagram, right? So I did this video. How could Carson Wentz get $128 million? The haters, you wouldn't even believe the haters. The Eagles fan went nuts on me. I've been saying this about Carr. Now Carr re-signs a big deal. I'm like, are you kidding me? Why? What has he done? What has he done? Do you like Carr or no?
So here's what I think about Derek Carr. He puts up good numbers, and he certainly pads his stats, no question. Really, if you look at numbers, he's one of the top 12, 13 quarterbacks in the NFL. Right. And that's the problem. It's almost like a curse of the middle quarterback that the Raiders have, where you want to get better, but then who is better that's available, number one. Number two, you want stability in your quarterback position. Derek Carr does give them stability, but he doesn't necessarily give them big wins. He just gives them a lot of numbers, and once in a while they make the playoffs. So I feel for their situation, because it seems like they're handcuffed. But at some point, I agree with you on this. At some point, they need to suck it up and say, you know what? We probably have to get rid of him, and we may have to be bad for a year or two and find a real quarterback and draft somebody new. Because you can't be staying in the middle. Because if you're in the middle, you're not going to make the playoffs, or if you do, you're going to be eliminated round one. And if you do make it and you win a game or two, you're still not going to be a Super Bowl winner. I love Derek Carr, but he's not a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Just like Kirk Cousins. Love Kirk Cousins. Not a Super Bowl winning quarterback.
Ryan Tannehill, same category.
Ryan Tannehill. They're good quarterbacks. They put up good numbers. They could lead your teams to the playoffs, and maybe they win a game or two here and there. But unfortunately, these teams are stuck in the middle quarterback curse, which is the reality that all these guys put up great numbers and can lead you to the playoffs. Will they win you a Super Bowl? Probably not. So at some point, the Raiders, the Tennessee Titans, other teams have to sit down and really think, hey, you know what? Do we just bite the bullet? Do we suck for another 2 or 3 years, find a real franchise quarterback, and eventually become a Super Bowl winner? Because the guy that we have right now is good, puts up numbers, but he is not going to win us a Super Bowl. So it's a sticky situation. I'm sure it's hard for everybody to try and determine when that time is to cut the cord. But I'll say this, in the Raiders case, paying Derek Carr this much money when you know already that he's not going to win you a Super Bowl, it doesn't quite make sense. Because at the end of the day, you're only going to prolong the inevitable. Now you have Derek Carr for what, 5 more years, 6 more years, which is fine. If you're looking for good numbers and maybe a playoff appearance 3 out of the 6 years, and you win one game and then you end up losing, that's nice. And if you want to keep your fans involved, that's great. But at some point, you need to cut the cord and say, we need a real quarterback who's going to win us a Super Bowl. I don't think at this point Derek Carr is one of those guys. So it's going to be pretty frustrating for them moving forward when they pay him all this money, and yet they're not going to be winning a Super Bowl or even going deep into the playoffs.
Hey, Jon, nothing but facts here, man. I appreciate you coming on. This was exciting. Make sure you guys go follow him at Jon Z, as in Zebra Sports, Jon Z Sports on Twitter. And do you have a podcast or show? How can they listen to you?
Yep, go to Sports Talk Chicago on YouTube. You can listen to it here in the local Chicago market on AM 1530 WCKG. Watch it on 59.3 VPod TV. But all of you on YouTube, just head over to Sports Talk Chicago and hit that subscribe button, and every video that I post is going to be right there for you.
All right, Jon, stay on for a minute as we get off here. But, guys, thank you. Make sure you guys subscribe. And there you guys have it, Fantasy Football Impact, the Bears, inside information. Jon, that was very impressive. A lot of wealth and knowledge. Your brain, we got to have you back on, where if someone gets hurt or someone pisses me off during the season, we'll have you come in and I can vent to you and we can vent together. Or if the new coach doesn't do well as well. Again.
That sounds great.
All right, guys. Thanks, guys. We appreciate you. Subscribe, and we'll talk soon. Hope you guys enjoyed the show.